Chapter 24, Silvrath. The emergency bells shattered pre-dawn silence with brutal urgency. Not the Academy's standard chimes. Deep, resonant gongs that spoke of kingdom-ending catastrophe. I jerked awake in my quarters, disoriented, still fragmented from days of isolation. The corridors outside flooded with mages rushing toward the assembly hall. Footsteps thundering. Voices shouting questions no one could answer. I stumbled to my window. The distant horizon flickered with impossible colors. Purple bleeding into green, bleeding into shades that had no names. Reality itself convulsing under assault. The air tasted wrong, metallic and sharp, like lightning about to strike. Master Theron's voice echoed through amplification magic, each word carrying the weight of barely controlled panic.
Unprecedented multi-vent outbreak at Silvrath. Simultaneous incursion at Boundary Wall. Every combat-capable mage mobilizes immediately.
My hands shook as I fastened my uniform. The black marks on my skin seemed to pulse. In rhythm with some distant chaos I could feel but not see. Silvrath, the jewel of the kingdom. Crown city of 500,000 souls. Seat of imperial power where kingdoms rose and fell. If the capital fell, the entire realm collapsed into chaos and civil war. This was the nightmare scenario every mage trained for and prayed never came. I grabbed my gear, checked my channels. The ink levels were manageable after the closet transfer with Dane. Not optimal, but functional. Good enough to fight. Good enough to die. I ran toward the assembly hall with hundreds of others. All of us flowing like a river toward whatever horror awaited. The Academy courtyard transformed into controlled chaos. Teleportation circles flared with silver light. Combat mages appearing from regional outposts across the kingdom. Their uniforms marked with insignia I recognized from maps. From history. From stories of battles that shaped the realm. Veterans. Elite units. People who had survived things that killed most mages before their third deployment. Voices rose around me. Fragments of conversation cutting through the chaos.
How did the anchors fail? 7 vents, simultaneously, that's not random. Vents opening in the capital should be impossible. The reality anchors are strongest there. Something broke through the defenses, something coordinated. This isn't natural outbreak, this is attack.
The implications hung heavy in the air. Vents were random chaos. Unpredictable. Unavoidable. But 7 vents opening at once in the most protected city in the kingdom? That was impossible. Unless someone made it possible. I stood amid the organized pandemonium, feeling small and broken, expecting assignment to supply lines or refugee management. Seraphina's influence would ensure I stayed far from anything that mattered.
Harrow, Liv, Ashforge, Dane, frontline deployment to Silvrath.
The voice cut through the noise like a blade. I froze, certain I had misheard.
Report to Teleportation Circle 7 for immediate deployment.
Something cracked in my chest. Hope or terror or both simultaneously. Across the courtyard, Seraphina's face went white with rage.
Coldwell, Seraphina, Boundary Wall assignment. Report to Circle 3.
She opened her mouth. Protest forming on her lips. Master Theron's gaze cut to her. Cold. Absolute.
The Boundary Wall is the kingdom's most dangerous posting. You should be honored by the assignment.
The dismissal was complete. Seraphina was capable enough to be needed at the most lethal front. Far enough away that she could not interfere with what the brass clearly intended to happen. The message was brutally clear. Political bullshit mattered less than survival. And the administration knew what resonance between Dane and me represented. We were being given one final chance to prove our worth, or die together trying. I pushed through the crowd toward Circle 7. Other mages parted around me, some with recognition, some with pity, most with calculation about whether I would survive the day. Dane was already there, checking culmination with mechanical precision. His crystalline eyes met mine across the courtyard. He extended his hand, not for show, not for witnesses, just for us. I crossed the remaining distance, took his hand in mine. The transfer triggered instantly, weeks of accumulated byproduct flooding between us, his ash tempering my chaos, my ink keeping him flexible against crystallization. Relief crashed through my channels. Not the full release we both craved, but enough. Enough to function. Enough to fight. His fingers tightened on mine. His jaw clenched.
Ready?
His voice was clipped. Military precision barely hiding emotion underneath. No. The honesty surprised me. But I will be anyway. His mouth almost smiled.
Good answer.
The teleportation mage gestured us forward.
Positions. We launch in 30 seconds.
We stepped into the circle. Silver light began to build around us.
Stay close.
Dane said.
Don't do anything stupid.
That is not much of a plan.
It's the only one we have.
The light flared. Reality folded. The teleportation was gut-wrenching. Reality compressing around us. Distance collapsing into a moment of nauseating displacement. My stomach lurched. My channels screamed. Everything that made me solid felt like it was being pulled apart and reassembled wrong. Then we were through. I emerged in Silvrath's Grand Plaza and found a world of nightmare. The plaza was massive. Cobblestone stretched 100 yards in every direction, surrounded by towering government buildings with marble columns and gilded domes. Or at least they had been. Now half the buildings folded into themselves. Architecture collapsing into geometries that should not exist. A courthouse phased between dimensions. Its front steps leading up. Its doors opening down. Windows that showed 3 different interiors simultaneously. The famous Founder's Fountain in the plaza's center erupted water that fell upward. The bronze statues of the 3 kings twisted slowly, their features melting, reforming, becoming something other than human. People scattered across the cobblestones, running in every direction. No coordination, just pure animal panic. A woman dragged 2 children toward what she thought was safety. The ground buckled beneath her. She stumbled, kept running. A merchant abandoned his cart, silks and spices spilling across stone that rippled like water. Soldiers tried to direct the evacuation, shouting orders no one could hear over the screaming. Over the sound of reality tearing itself apart, monsters poured into the plaza from the nearest vent. A thing with 6 legs and no head skittered across the cobblestones, its body covered in mouths that shrieked in harmony. Something that might have been a wolf if wolves were made of oil and broken glass lunged at a fleeing civilian. A soldier intercepted it with his spear. The blade passed through without resistance. The creature dissolved into smoke. Reformed behind him, a dyad pair engaged the wolf thing. The cleaver carved reality around it, trapping it in a sphere of absolute order. The binder wove dissolution networks, unmaking the creature one molecule at a time. The wolf thing died screaming. More monsters replaced it immediately. I stood paralyzed, mind struggling to process the scale of catastrophe. This was not training, not controlled simulation, not academic exercise. This was the capital city dying in real time. 500,000 people screaming. Reality itself collapsing under assault that should have been impossible. Dane's hand found mine. Grounding. Anchoring.
Breathe.
He said quietly.
Focus on what you can control. Everything else is noise.
His crystalline eyes were calm. Steady. The death wish still lurked there, but tempered now by something that looked almost like hope. I nodded. Took a breath. Let his certainty steady my fragmenting panic. Around us, organized warfare raged. Strike teams coordinated attacks on larger monsters. Containment units prevented vent expansion. Evacuation teams guided civilians toward teleportation zones. Hundreds of mages working in concert. Each one fighting to save what could be saved. Each one knowing most would die before dawn. This was what magical warfare looked like when everything went wrong simultaneously. Controlled chaos held together by training and desperation, and the knowledge that failure meant kingdom-ending catastrophe. We were part of that now. 2 more bodies thrown into the grinder. 2 more chances at survival or glorious death. Commander Thrace's field command center was barely controlled pandemonium. Holographic maps flickered with red markers. Mages shouting coordinates. Officers directing strike teams with voices hoarse from continuous orders. The acrid smell of spent magic hung thick as smoke. Dane and I stood before the tactical board, still clasping hands, drawing what comfort we could from the connection. 7 vents pulsed on the map like heartbeats of something malevolent and hungry. Thrace's fingers stabbed at 3 markers with particular venom. 2nd, 4th, and 7th districts. The 7th glowed angry crimson, larger than the others. Already marked with 2 failed strike teams and casualty counts that made my stomach clench.
These 3 are yours.
Thrace's voice carried the flat affect of someone making calculations about acceptable losses.
Other teams handle containment. You 2 close vents.
I opened my mouth. Closed it. Could not find words adequate to the magnitude of what she was asking. 3 vents, just the 2 of us.
I know what you did at the regional city.
Thrace's eyes were hard but not unkind when they met mine.
That synchronized convergence is why you're getting the worst assignments. You can actually seal these things. So you're going into the deep hells and you're bringing my city back. Or you're not coming back at all?
The choice was not really a choice. Dane's hand found mine again. A brief squeeze that sent ash and ink flowing between us even through that minimal contact. His fingers were already cooler than they should be. The first whisper of crystallization beginning. Around us, other strike teams received their assignments. Experienced dyads. Legacy pairs. Warriors who had fought together for years. Dane and I were barely reconciled. Still wounded. Still fragile from weeks of separation and Seraphina's campaign. But our resonance at Corvus had made us legendary. And legends were what desperate commanders deployed when everything else had failed.
2nd district first.
Thrace pointed to the map.
Smallest vent, get your rhythm, then 4th, then 7th if you're still alive.
Understood.
Dane's voice steady despite everything.
You have full operational authority. Whatever you need, whoever you need, you take. No questions, no hesitation. The kingdom is dying. Save it.
She dismissed us with a gesture. We turned to leave.
Row.
I looked back. Thrace's expression softened fractionally.
Make them regret underestimating you.
I nodded. Could not speak past the tightness in my throat. I watched Dane check culmination with ritualistic precision. The sword gleamed with accumulated magic from generations of Ashforges. Silver sheen already spread across his forearms. The crystallization accelerating under stress. His crystalline eyes met mine. I saw a trace of the death wish still lurking there. Not as prominent as before. Tempered by what we had shared, but back now that we had an impossible assignment.
Standard protocol.
His voice steady, professional. Like we were discussing training exercises instead of diving into chaos that had killed 2 experienced teams already.
I cut you, Seal. Stay within 20 feet if something goes wrong.
I grabbed his face with both hands, forced him to look at me. Really look. Don't you dare plan your martyrdom before we've even started. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise. Or maybe the fragile beginning of actually wanting to survive this.
I'm just being realistic.
Be realistic after we close the vents. Right now, I need you focused on living. His jaw clenched.
Liv.
Promise me. My voice broke. Promise me you're fighting to survive, not fighting to die beautifully. He was quiet for a long moment. His hands came up to cover mine where they pressed against his face.
I promise.
The words rough.
I'll try.
It was not everything I wanted, but it was more than I expected. I released him, stepped back, checked my own channels one final time. The ink levels were manageable. Not ideal, but sufficient for what came next. We walked out of the hastily erected staging area. Canvas walls snapping in wind that came from wrong directions. Supply crates stacked in configurations meant to anchor reality against the chaos bleeding through the city. The streets beyond were panic and violence. Civilians fled in whatever direction seemed safer. Families clutching children. Merchants abandoning carts. Soldiers directing evacuation with voices hoarse from screaming. Dane took my hand as we walked. Not for show, for transfer. Ink and ash flowing between us with each step. Exchange of byproduct we both needed desperately. His fingers cool against mine. My channels burning with accumulated chaos. We passed a dyad pair fighting something that had too many mouths. The cleaver carved through its bulk with methodical precision. His blade leaving wounds that refused to close. The binder wove binding networks around its limbs, preventing regeneration, containing the corruption. They worked with practiced synchronization, years of partnership evident in every movement. The creature collapsed, dissolved into black smoke that smelled of rot. The binder caught my eye. Nodded once. Professional acknowledgement between warriors facing the same nightmare. We kept walking. Another pair worked crowd control. The cleaver's armor channeling barriers that directed civilians away from danger. The binder casting amplification networks that made her cleaver's barriers stronger, wider, more resilient against the chaos pressing from all sides. This was organized magical warfare. Hundreds of dyads working in concert. Each pair assigned specific roles in the larger strategy. Containment, evacuation, strike teams, supply lines, medical support, all of it coordinated through Thrace's command center. All of it barely sufficient against 7 simultaneous vents. The second district vent came into view, a wound in reality approximately 20 feet across, pulsing with colors that hurt to perceive. The edges writhed like infected flesh trying to close around foreign objects. Containment teams surrounded it in a half circle, 6 dyad pairs, 12 mages total, casting overlapping reality anchors that prevented the vent from expanding, severing storms that killed anything trying to emerge, binding collapses that crushed monsters before they could fully manifest. They were holding the line. Barely. Exhaustion showed in every face. Sweat despite the cold. Trembling hands. Eyes that had seen too much horror in too short a time. The containment team leader spotted us approaching. Relief flooded his face. He was older, scarred, a veteran who had survived things that killed most mages.
Ashforge,
His voice carried gratitude and desperation.
thank the gods. We can contain it, but we can't close it from the outside. Whatever's generating this is inside, deep inside,
Dane nodded.
How long can you hold?
as long as you need.
The leader gestured to his teams.
We're rotating casters every 10 minutes, full transfer cycles. We can maintain this perimeter indefinitely if we have to.
You won't have to.
Dane's voice was absolute certainty.
We close this in the next hour or we're dead.
The leader's expression tightened, but he nodded.
Understood. We'll keep the perimeter secure. Nothing gets in or out except you two.
Dane turned to me.
Final equipment check.
I checked my gear one more time. Belt secured. Focus crystals accessible. Channels clear and ready. He did the same. Culmination loose in its sheath. Armor properly fastened. Silver spreading further up his arms with each passing minute. The vent entrance writhed before us like a wound in the world's flesh. Reality buckled around it in ways that made my eyes water trying to focus. The edges were wrong. Too sharp and too soft simultaneously. Like looking at something that existed in more dimensions than my brain could process. The air tasted of copper and ozone and sweetly rotting flowers. Monsters spawned from the impossible angles within. Things with too many limbs. Mouths that screamed in frequencies that made my teeth ache. This was where we proved whether love and resonance could overcome systematic destruction. Whether two broken people could be stronger together than they ever were apart. Dane rolled his shoulders, adjusted his grip on culmination, nodded once. I nodded back. We descended into chaos.